Hi, my name is Sarah Dammer, and today I will be presenting my informative speech. The topic of my speech is called Black Lives Matter, and the title of my speech is it really justice for all? So Black Lives Matter is a movement that portrays the truth of how African Americans are victimized by the state and by the police officials here in America. I'm going to show some examples of how Black people are victimized. Black people are arrested aggressively, killed inhumanely, and sentenced unjustly. This is a picture of an 8-month-old pregnant woman. Her name is Michelle Cooks. She was slammed on the ground, against a fence by 2 white officers. She was being arrested behind her back, and so she was unable to hold her stomach. This is just one example of how brutally police can be when they arrest African Americans. This is another example of how an African American girl, a 14-year-old, she was a teenager, she was at a pool party, and she was also being slammed to the grass, and the officer, Eric Casebolt, that was arresting her, actually pressed his knees against her back, causing her some pain. And the officer that arrested her, his attorney tried to explain his behavior and by defending him, and he was saying that the officer previously in that day had been called to answer to 2 suicidal calls, and so that's why when he went to the 3rd call to the pool party to arrest the people, he was emotionally unstable. I'm not buying that. If the officer was emotionally unstable, he shouldn't have responded to the pool party call. There are no excuses for the officer's behavior. The officer is not a new officer. The officer, Eric, he had been with the force for 10 years, so he knows better. Okay, so not much has changed, I don't think, from the time of slavery here in America to the 90s to today in 2015. During the time of slavery, in 1672, according to the Virginia state law, it was legal to wound or kill an enslaved person that was resisting arrest. Today, and in the 90s, we don't have slavery, but we do have people that are resisting arrest sometimes. However, it does not make it okay to brutally beat them. So here's a picture of Rodney King, March 3rd, 1991. He was beat by 4 officers. He was beat very bad. I actually watched the video. It was horrifying. And then this is Martise Johnson, who was just arrested on March 18, 2015, so not too long ago. He had been slammed to the ground, and he actually had to get 10 stitches on his forehead, and he was also videotaped. I can tell you that Martise Johnson was not resisting arrest, and even in the tape he was saying that he was not resisting arrest, so it was really unfortunate that he got beat that way. But honestly, with all the research that I'm doing, it's scary, but I'm seeing that history is really repeating itself. So after the Rodney King trial, there was like a vote, and there were some statistics done by the ABC News and Washington Post poll, and so it showed that 64% of white people thought that the officers that beat Rodney King should have been convicted, and should have been found guilty, and it showed that 92% of black people also believed that the officers should have been convicted in the Rodney King beating. Unfortunately, the officers were found not guilty. I don't know how that happened, but it did. So these numbers really don't mean anything. Now I'm going to talk about black sentencing versus white sentencing. The first youth offender is a white man. The second youth offender is a black man. Neither of the young men have any prior convictions or criminal history. They were both being charged with the exact same charge under similar circumstances. So the white gentleman was mandated to serve the minimum of 5 to 10 years in jail, the lowest sentence he could have gotten, and then the African American was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in jail. So an Associated Press analysis supplied by the state judges of Pennsylvania showed that African Americans are sentenced more stricter than white people. And this is just one example of that. History is repeating itself every day in today's society. Blacks are being arrested forcefully, killed violently, and sentenced inhumanely. The Black Lives Matter is a movement about justice for all black people, all Americans. No woman deserves to be slammed on her stomach and handcuffed behind her back. So we need to make a change.